In this video, we're going to look at how to worksheet toplight, how to worksheet the D40 LED wash units, and how to think about lighting the floor instead of the people. We're going to start the same way we started with front light. I've put tracing paper over my section and traced the set, the grid, the people, the audience risers, the plaster line, everything I need. Toplight is a lot easier to worksheet. We're just going to slide our beam template under here, and you're just going to put it pointing straight down. You'll notice that this is a different beam template that I was using for a source 4. Up here, I have a par symbol, which you can also find on your template. And then on your template, there's also this 3 little dots. That means it's an LED unit. So this is how I want to draw my D40. Now, D40s also have lenses, and they work kind of like changing the barrel in a source 4. They're just a plastic lens that fits in the gel frame, and it goes in the gel slot because you don't need gel or frost in an LED wash unit. If you look on the ETC app, there are lots of lenses that change the shape of the beam, but for the purpose of this class, we're only going to deal with extra wide, wide, medium, and narrow. We're not going to mess with linear or anything like that. But you can see here that I have drawn my beam angles from the app here for my extra wide, wide, medium, and narrow. And I've written my beam angles over here. Go ahead and open the ETC Photometrics app and hit type at the top. And then under wash, scroll over to the D40 Luster Plus. That's what we're going to be using in class. I'm going to experiment again. Just like I didn't really know what barrel I wanted my source 4 to be, I don't really know what lens I want until I look at it. So I'm going to just take a look at all of my options. Since I'm thinking about lighting the floor instead of the actors, I'm not going to measure to the actors' heads for my throw distance. What I'm gonna do is measure all the way to the floor. A lot of times I want to measure to the floor for backlight or top light because it doesn't light the actor's face very well, but it does tone the space really nicely. That's why I'm looking at this today. So if I look at my throw distance, that is just about 12 feet. Remember, my fixture goes 18 inches below the grid. So I'm looking at these beams, and the extra wide, which is 101 degrees, seems huge to me. It's going to cover basically the whole space. I have a lot less control when I'm using a wash light, but I still want some control. I'm gonna look at the next biggest. I'm gonna look at the wide. That gives me a little bit more control. If I'm looking at the floor though, I'm still covering basically the whole floor here. So I still don't think I want that. If I go to the medium, I have kind of an upstage, downstage that I could use to isolate a little bit. And if I go all the way to the narrow, it's really tight. So maybe I want that and maybe I don't, but I can see that I would need more fixtures than areas, which is fine. But what I don't want to do is use up all of my LED lights when I don't really need them. Let's take a look at these in the Photometrics app and see about the brightness. I've decided I'm going to go with the medium lens because it has the right combination of foot candles and spread for me. I'm going to break the rules. So when I was doing front light, I had 1 light per area, which is great because I need to light the actor's face evenly. But if I'm looking at the floor, maybe my areas don't make sense because maybe there's too many lights. There's no rule that says you have to have a light per area. I'm gonna look at this. I'm actually gonna look at going in between my areas. I wouldn't recommend going kind of askew. I personally like to keep my light either in between my areas or on my areas. It just makes it easier to focus for me. I'm going in between 2C and 1C, and I'm just gonna draw my fixture in, and then I'm going to draw this beam in. Looking at the floor, I don't need 3 lights. I might decide to go with 2 lights. And this still gives me enough overlap. And I don't have shutters on these, so I'm aligning where I want the beam to fall off. So if I want a little separation between these areas and the deck, then I'm just going to align my light that way. This is between 2C and 3C. I'm going between the pipe on the pipe running upstage, downstage. We'll see if that aligns when I get to my plan. Normally, we talked about in the front light video, I wouldn't want this gap in between because it wouldn't light someone going up the stairs, but since I'm looking at the floor, it's completely fine. The next part is really easy. I'm looking at the floor here, my top light is lighting it, and this is going to be a circle since it doesn't have an angle that makes the back of the beam longer than the front of the beam, like in front light. So I'm just gonna put this over here. I'm going to make a tick on the floor where the center of my light is. And then I'm gonna make a line from beam to beam, edge. And then I'm gonna rotate it, keeping my tick on the floor because that's where my target is, and draw beam edge to beam edge again. So now you have an even cross instead of the football. So I'm going to take this and I'm just going to make a circle. I'm gonna make a note that these are the mediums that I think I like, and then I'm gonna switch to the plan. Now I have my plan covered in trace like I always do with just the bare minimum traced. I have my beam and I've traced it and drawn a couple more because I find it really helpful when I'm laying out top light. So this is my medium beam that I looked at in the section and I think I like. So I started between 1 center and 2 center. Then I'm gonna look at what the next light can do. If I put it next to the light that I'm pretty sure I like, I can kind of put it in the middle of 1L and 2L. So that's sort of on a diagonal, but it stays in line with my original light. And then I can check over here and look at what if I do the same thing. That coverage looks pretty good. And remember, it's for the floor. When I go up for the next row, I wonder if I want to do something really similar because I had gone between 2C and 3C up here. This is starting to look good to me because if I move this up here, I think I'll be covered for that dark spot. I'm gonna go ahead and give this a shot and see where my layout takes me. Now you can see how I decided to lay out my top light, and you could see me thinking, I decided that I didn't want one here even though the coverage was better, because it doesn't really matter to me for this if there's dark spots here. A wash light is it's not going to have a hard beam. It's going to blend a little better. Also, I know that in focus, if I want to cover this, I could just tip these in a little bit. Maybe tip this downstage and onstage and cover that a little bit better. I do want one light at center because I think that's a really possible place for Juicy to do his song. The last thing I'm going to do, of course, is put my lights on the plot. I'm looking at where we wound up and it looks pretty close, that I have a pipe everywhere I need it. Not there, not there. Let's take a look at this. Now I have 9 lights instead of my 16 areas. I'm saving a lot of fixtures to do something else with. I know that I want something really spectacular for the end, so maybe that's a good place to use my LED fixtures. You also saw me measuring from the pipe over to the fixture when I didn't have a pipe there. I'm just checking to see if that's close enough to use a sidearm instead of hanging a whole other pipe, especially because there's a break in the pipe here. So I would have to move upstage or downstage with that. It's also worth pointing out that D40s, like Source 4s, have a specific symbol, and it tells you what the lens is, just like it tells you what the barrel is. Make sure to look that up in the USITT standards. Because I wound up not needing as many lights as I thought I would, I've gone back to my conceptual hookup and I've updated it. So just like I added in what I know, I've gone ahead and crossed out the fixtures that I didn't use. I've added what the lens I used was, what the watts are, the position of the light, if there's a sidearm, and then for my area, I've gone ahead and updated it. This is how I like to do it. If it winds up between 2 areas, I like to put a little slash. So I know that when I stand at focus, I should stand in between those 2 areas. Color is no color because there's a lens and it changes color on its own. And then I updated my inventory. So now I know that I have more left for something later. And I went ahead and of course put my new channel numbers on my plot.